I had to do some inventory, and I realized that, I became a Democrat at 18 when I voted for the first time. I turned 48 this year, and 30 years is a long time, and I'm not the same guy 30 years later.
Well, that was Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson responding to our political reporter Jack Fink when he asked Johnson why he chose to leave the Democratic Party and become a Republican. Back in December, Mayor Johnson told us that he started thinking about switching parties in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder and the movement to defund the police. Tonight, we are learning more about that decision in a brand new article from our media partners over at Texas Monthly. Alex Samuels sat down with Dallas's mayor recently. She is joining us tonight here to chat a little bit more about this. Alex, thanks for being with us. Mayor Johnson made this announcement last year, and you asked to speak with him, but he did not put you on his calendar back then. So why do you think he decided to finally speak with Texas Monthly now about this?
Yeah, firstly, I think that he wanted to share his story, which is very personal to him, but he also wanted to make sure it was told accurately. Over time, since the party switch, he has spoken more to local media outlets, but I think part of him was, excited and maybe a little bit apprehensive to go on record with such personal details about his upbringing and some of the criticisms he says he's received even before becoming the mayor of Dallas. In the end, I'm really glad he granted us this interview because we got to talk about a lot of topics I believe are important to residents of Dallas, but I'm also glad that he felt comfortable enough to open up about his personal life in the way that he did, because I think readers walk away from this interview with a more full picture of who Eric Johnson is and what it is he stands for.
Sure. And Mayor Johnson, we know he has a political background. Can you talk a little bit about that point? And if this announcement you think would play into a potential political future, is this a pivot for his political career?
Sure. So before getting elected mayor of Dallas in 2019, Eric Johnson served for nearly a decade in the Texas legislature as a Democrat representing House District 100, which is, of course, anchored in Dallas. But he announced in September in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that he's now a Republican. So one thing we know is that here in Texas, voters don't register their party affiliation necessarily. You can say that you're a Democrat and then vote in the Republican primary and vice versa. So Johnson says he didn't want Dallas's residents to continue assuming he was a Democrat. And there's no way to really make clear you're switching parties without making that news public in the way that he did. He told me, too, that he wanted to make that announcement himself. He didn't want some pesky reporter like me probably digging up his voting record and seeing which primary he was voting in. To answer your question, though, about whether the party switch is a tee-up for something else, Johnson told me repeatedly that this is not. He said he plans to retire from office and has no intention to run for anything else when his term ends in 2027. And he thinks his next step will become more clear when we get to that point.
Yeah, I guess it's one of these wait-and-see type situations. In Texas Monthly's headline for the article, there's a quote that reads, "The real heart of the Democratic Party is with criminals." Tell us a little bit more about what you think led to that quote.
Right. So he shared with me that during the 2020 protests following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, that he faced protesters at his house and calls from certain Dallas residents to defund the Dallas Police Department. And it was around that time he also told me that he came to realize that Democrats were, in his words, pro-offender or indifferent toward victims of violent crime. I don't know if there was necessarily one watershed moment for him, but he told me that public safety is his number one priority, both as mayor, but also as a father to 3 young kids. And he believes that the Republican Party holds the same values that he does on that topic.
Okay, well, our thanks to Alex Samuels with Texas Monthly. There's much more that Alex was able to interview Mayor Johnson about. You can read all of it right now on TexasMonthly.com. You can also find the article in the July issue of Texas Monthly. Good chatting with you, Alex. Thank you. We'll be right back.